You know the name Einstein. It's basically a synonym for genius. But what you might not know is that the story of what happened to his brain after he died is one of the strangest, most bizarre tales in the history of science. It's a story of obsession, a literal brain heist, and incredible discoveries. So, let's get into it. So, here is how we're going to break down this wild story. First, we'll look at Einstein's last wish. Then, the shocking brain heist that completely ignored it. We'll follow the brain's 40-year road trip in a couple of jars, then dive into what science finally figured out from it. And we'll end with the biggest question of all. Was he born a genius or did he become one?
Okay, so first things first. Einstein was a smart guy, right? He knew that people were obsessed with him, and especially with his brain. The last thing he wanted was for his body to be turned into some kind of scientific spectacle.
I mean, his instructions were crystal clear. Cremate my body, scatter the ashes in secret, no grave, no memorial, no weird cult following. He just wanted to disappear. But, in a twist of fate, the one thing he absolutely did not want to happen is exactly what happened next.
All right, so picture this. It's April 1955. Einstein has just died at Princeton Hospital. The pathologist on call that day is a man named Dr. Thomas Harvey, and his job is to perform the autopsy. Seems pretty standard, right? Well, it was anything but. So in a move that is just unbelievably bold, Dr. Harvey decides he can't let this opportunity pass. He performs the autopsy, and then he just takes the brain, puts it in a jar, and walks out. Of course, when the hospital found out, he was fired immediately. But it was too late. The brain was gone.
And here's where the story gets even crazier. Harvey, who's now out of a job but is in possession of the most famous brain on Earth, goes to Einstein's son, Hans Albert. He basically begs him, saying, "Let me study it for the good of science." And somehow it worked. Hans Albert reluctantly gave him permission, which kinda sorta made Harvey the brain's official guardian.
And so began one of the weirdest road trips imaginable. For the next 40 years, Einstein's brain wasn't in some fancy research lab. Nope, it was crisscrossing the country with Dr. Harvey, usually in the trunk of his car.
That number you see there, 240, that's how many pieces Harvey meticulously sliced the brain into. He took tons of photos, then chopped it up into 240 little blocks, put them in jars of celluloid, and stored them, wait for it, in his basement. For years, one of the greatest scientific minds in history was just sitting in some guy's basement. As you can imagine, this obsession took a huge toll on Harvey's life. His wife left him. She was apparently tired of living with pickled brain parts. He lost jobs. He moved from state to state. He even lost his medical license and ended up working in a plastics factory, all while guarding those jars like they were the crown jewels. Finally, after almost 30 years of trying and failing to unlock the brain's secrets by himself, Harvey had a realization. He couldn't do it alone. So he started carefully cutting off tiny slivers, putting them on slides, and mailing them out to top neurologists around the world. And that's when things really started to happen. And just like that, the era of this strange road trip was over, and the era of real scientific discovery began. Researchers finally had the raw material. So the big question, what did they find? What was actually different about Einstein's brain? So to understand one of the biggest findings, we need to talk about something called the corpus callosum. The easiest way to think about it is like a superhighway of nerves connecting the two halves of your brain, the logical left side and the creative right side. The bigger the highway, the faster information can travel between them. Well, it turns out Einstein's corpus callosum wasn't just a highway, it was an autobahn. It was way thicker and more connected than the average person's. This probably meant his logical and creative hemispheres were in constant high-speed communication, which could explain his amazing ability to visualize these incredibly complex problems in physics. But it wasn't just the one thing. When researchers looked closer, they found a whole bunch of oddities. For instance, his brain was actually lighter than average. The pattern of grooves in his parietal lobe, which is key for math, was totally unique. Some studies even suggest he had more neurons packed into certain areas. So the main takeaway here is that there wasn't one single genius button in his brain. It was more like a whole constellation of small advantages, better communication, a unique structure, maybe more processing power, all working together to create something extraordinary. All of these physical discoveries lead us to the biggest question of all. Was Einstein just born with this special brain? Did he win the genetic lottery? Or did his brain become that way because of how he used it? Nature or nurture?
Well, if you look at his childhood, the born this way idea starts to look a little shaky. The guy was famously late to start talking. He was terrible at memorizing things. He struggled with his multiplication tables and was generally considered a bit of a daydreamer. He was only really good at math and science.
But then something just clicked. His brain went into overdrive. At 12, he taught himself geometry in a single day. By 14, he'd mastered advanced calculus all on his own. And by 26, he published 4 papers in 1 year that completely changed our understanding of the universe.
So the thinking today is that Einstein's brain became special because he made it special. His intense, lifelong obsession with figuring out the universe was like the ultimate brain exercise. He was constantly pushing it, forcing it to make new connections. He essentially rewired his own brain to be a genius.
And so, after 40 years in basements and car trunks, the brain that figured out E equals mc squared finally came to rest. What's left of it is now preserved on slides at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. It's a quiet end to a very, very strange journey.
And that leaves us with one last, really powerful idea. Einstein's story isn't just about one unique brain. It's proof of how flexible and adaptable our brains are. It suggests that maybe greatness isn't something you're just born with. It's something you build. So if that kind of intense passion can physically change a mind, it really makes you wonder, what are our own brains capable of?